Hello, everyone. Welcome to the expert session number 123. And this expert session is an expert session from Evolve Commerce Club. Evolve Commerce Club is a senior network where we connect senior board, senior board leaders and senior advisors with growth companies in commerce. So, for this expert session is an online weekly session where we bring our community together, where we bring our community together to participate, interact, and exchange ideas and knowledge. And today, we have with us Sander. So Sander Ardinois, former VP of AI at H&M Group and former director of AI at Nike. Across both organizations, he has led large-scale AI initiatives spanning forecast, inventory optimization, pricing, personalization, and commercial decision-making. At Nike, he oversaw an AI portfolio tied to more than 100 million in EBIT impact. At H&M, he led a global AI organization operating across one of the world's largest fashion retailers. And to co-host the session with us, our longtime member and friend, Peter Birkholm-Buch. So engineering leader, software architect, and AI practitioner at Carlsberg. Peter has spent more than 2 decades building software platforms, engineering organizations, and developing ecosystems. So his work today focuses on AI engineering, scientific computing, platform architecture, and enabling large organizations to adopt AI responsibly and effectively. So, Sander, we always start our expert sessions with a controversial question. And here it goes. So everyone's talking about AI agents, everyone's talking about co-pilots, and everyone's talking about productivity gains. Yet, only a tiny percentage of organizations have successfully embedded AI into core business operations. So, have we become too focused on AI use cases and not focused enough on the operating systems required to make AI work?
Yeah, thanks, Gustavo. Thanks for the intro. I think that's a super interesting take on the space, and definitely like there's a huge demand within all enterprises, across the board, top top down and bottom up on the impact of AI agents, what they can do and whatnot. At the same time, it's important to focus on where is value possible to be created. And with any new kind of technology coming in, it does require a shift in processes, shift in decision making, shift in way of working, much more than it only requires the technology to be implemented to be able to drive that change. And so it's good to distinguish, when you talk about AI use cases. One is the broad rollout of the co-pilots, etc., which aid individual productivity to a large degree of employees at these companies. Everyday AI usage, just as everyone kind of in their personal lives has started using AI and AI chatbot and obviously adapted for the enterprise. And then kind of AI use cases, high impact on specific processes. That's where the forecasting sits, where optimizations, etc., etc. The two different beasts all together. I think there's a larger belief where you're alluding to that, with AI agents across the enterprise will automate lots of the work, the processes, decision making across. I don't think that's indeed the right infrastructure, the right literacy, the right change mindset is there in many organizations, and to that degree, nor is the technology always as integrated as it should be for that, to be effective. But I think there's a large impact across many organizations and industries on specific use cases where AI definitely is making that impact and increasingly broader so.
Great, thank you. Peter, you've been studying and developing AI for such a long time. So what's your take about it?
So I think your question was, are we spending too much time on specific use cases? And I think the answer is universally yes. It seems that most of the consultancy companies that do reports that have come out lately, they all say that AI is failing, which is kind of interesting from my point of view, because I think we're doing great with AI, at least in scientific computing. But being a software engineer myself, I mean, I've been using AI for a long time. When did we start with Copilot 1? 4 years ago, I think, when it first came out. And when we started with that, it was, mind-blowing that you could use AI for coding, and it's just gone berserk ever since. And today, I mean, who even codes anymore? I feel like I'm more of a conductor that's telling AI agents to implement code for me. So for me and in my industry, certainly AI is creating tremendous amount of value. For other more arcane corner use cases, I think it's harder to find the value. But I also think that we're kind of selling it like snake oil. It's like AI solves everything and blah. That's probably not the case. And I think we have to look at how people have access to AI. So my key pet peeve is distribution. Without distribution and everybody gets access to AI, there's not going to be any value. If you corner it up in center of excellence type scenarios, then it's not going to be successful. That seems to be the evidence coming out. But every company, every use case is different, so it's always hard to say do this or do that, and then that's the answer.
Great. And well, this is I think more for Sander, and I think I had done a following with you, Peter. But how do you create business value with AI? So you have like AI in H&M and Nike, and from your point of view and from your experience and from what you can share, if possible, not specifics, but how do you actually create business value with AI in such large organizations like that? So I believe it's also hard to change and to do some change, almost a change management, right?
Absolutely. I think there's roughly 3 different broad categories that AI generates value. And you have to understand. So it starts with, okay, how does business operate? So first off, looking at the top line, where can AI create value on the top line? So that means that you need to apply it to either sell more, get better product out, etc., so that your revenue increases. And if we look at retail specifically, especially in the sales space, tremendous value of AI coming through recommender systems, getting better search, personalization, all aiding, leveraging essentially the data that any retailer has to fit inventory, to fit product, get the right product at the right place for the right customer, and do that as good as possible. So there's huge amount of value from that. There's also quite a bit of work happening on the product space, matching the overall kind of demand which is there in the market for product, and then fitting assortment to that. And then there's looking at the bottom line, 2 distinctions on I think on value. One is really optimizing the core retail operations and merchandising operations. So that is a forecasting happening. It's the optimization of the value chain, indeed inventory optimization, pricing decisions. It's the core operations there. So it's leveraging all the information that you have about your customers, about your inventory, about your product, about the external factors such as demands which are there, and mapping that to make as good as possible decisions there. And to Peter's earlier point, I think that's where large amounts of value are created, and is for retailers at certain sizes is absolutely critical. And they have these and they have been running longer than LLMs have been around, and have been driving that that value absolutely in that space. And I think still is the largest pocket of value kind of coming from AI and anticipated to create value from AI. And then the third one, also on the bottom line, I think is most talked about, and probably the one where the least amount of value sits, it's this overall productivity for employees. That's where the co-pilot sits, etc. And there the promise is, and if you look at the kind of consulting reports, is about getting overall 30% more effectivity out of your employees, leveraging these AI systems. But then obviously, you need to apply that 30% either by headcount reduction or by growing without having to hire new to actually capitalize on that value. So I think that's the three broad ways that I always look at how AI is creating value.
Interesting. And for the first part, like for as you were talking, for foresight and all of these areas, I believe there's less, I would say, a little less touch on how people work than from the second part, this last part you said. So using AI for these analysis, I believe it's in some part is more quick, let's say, and not more easy, but it's more quick to adapt and to bring that type of information from people than from to the whole company, than from engaging every employee to work with AI and educate them on how to properly use AI and how to make it better for their work, for the company. What do you see something around that?
I think any changes, with an enterprise context is difficult, multifaceted, and definitely beyond only technology of it. So I think that's true for both. But if you look indeed, on the first one, it's really focusing on key decision points that you have within your, if you talk about within the merchandising kind of value chain, whether that's in quantification, replenishment, all these things, and focusing these and seeing, okay, how can you improve that decision making by applying forecasting, optimization, whatever is needed for that, and by doing that, ultimately, you affect your profitability as a company. So there's a quasi-direct link into that, or an easy to establish causal relationship between how good you are at that decision-making process versus the output of it, versus changing the entire company, indeed operating and every individual into it. That's a much broader program to roll out. Definitely value in it as well, but it's a broader change that's affected the entire organization, where indeed you need to up literacy across the board. And as Peter said, have the tools available for the employees to leverage it, have the integrations of these tools within the systems, that enterprise systems that you are using, within the data systems that you are using, in order to actually get that value. So you need to have the backbone of your technology landscape in order as well for it to create that value.
Yes, and Peter, how do you build the technical foundations that allow AI to scale, specifically inside a huge organization as the one you work also?
Good question. So I think it's important, or in my experience, the more you can buy as a platform, the faster you can run, so to speak. And what we see going on right now is a mad arms race, trying to fit a new feature into anything every week. And I've always said that if you rely on standard platforms as much as possible, then every time they roll out a new feature, then you get that for free, so to speak. Yes, they're going to raise prices eventually, but in the meantime, you get a bunch of features for free. So you're like a cork floating on the top of the ocean, right? So every time there's a new feature, you get that for free, then you can do more. And then again, back to distribution, if you have that rolled out to everyone, then everyone gets that advantage as soon as possible. And I guess the counterpoint to that is the more you specialize stuff, the harder it is to leverage new features, the harder it is to roll it out, and the harder it is to maintain it. So it depends, again, on your use cases. I think what we've done in Carlsberg, so specifically in Carlsberg Research Lab, we've placed our bet on OpenAI, because OpenAI 2.5 years ago when we started were the ones that were first out with the deep research and knowledge work features and models, and the other ones came after. In Carlsberg Group, they've been in Copilot because that's for everyone, right? So it's about rolling it out as broadly as possible. And then specifically in Carlsberg Research Lab, we've gained, if there's like a top 3, like Sander said before, I think number 1 is research knowledge work. It's using AI as an assistant to find stuff, review stuff, do knowledge synthesis, data interpretation, and access to historical knowledge. The second one is genomics and bioinformatics. AI knows everything about everything. And if you are in genomics and bioinformatics, it's extremely complicated areas. So having sort of a scientist sitting, an AI scientist sitting on your shoulder that knows everything allows you to just move a lot faster. And the last one is just reusable scientific engineer workflows. Juan will know it as platform engineering. So basically what we're doing is platform engineering for scientists, because all of them, and Sander will know this because he used to be in data science, every time you do something, you do the same 3 or 5 things before you start anything, right? It's ETL and getting everything in order and moving it through the medallion layer or whatever. It's the same grunt work you do all the time. And scientists are the same. So they have, data that they move through spreadsheets, or data that they get from instruments, or data that they get from colleagues. And every time they spend a lot of work massaging it to get it into the right way in order for it to work in their analysis workflow. So the more you can streamline that and make it reusable, the faster you can spend time on thinking about science and less time, building the same scaffolding again and again. So those would be the top 3 things.
That's great, and I'll follow a question with you, Peter. Then I'll get back to Sander, because I'd like to have more about fashion specifics and how that uses. But getting back to you, just to complement, and I think maybe to connect that what you answered a bit more with the business side itself. Let's say so. How do you see in terms of value at the end of the P&L line? Let's say, how do you see all these developments? What you can share, please. You're still at Carlsberg, and you don't want to have something that you cannot share. But in terms of this, do you see, or if you can bring some use cases specific? So how do you see your work and all of these science developments into AI affecting the P&L at the end of the day of the company, or at some area? Where do you see that leveraging it? Is it really less people to do the same job or more job, or is it faster, or is it actually a revenue gain because the production became, more efficient in terms of, where?
We don't know yet. So
that's good.
So one of the things I started thinking about when we started this project to accelerate scientific research with AI was exactly what you're saying. How do we measure value? And it becomes quickly like, how do you measure scientific acceleration? Is it, do scientists do more better science or less bad science? Or do they write papers faster? Or do they end their projects faster? Or what happens? All of that's pretty hard to measure, because it turns out that if a scientist gets a good idea, then they just kind of expand the scope of their project. They don't go, oh, well, we're done 6 months ahead of time. We discovered something and now we go home. Scientists don't work that way. So most of the initial value generation was, how much time do you save? And scientists will happily say that they save 8 hours a week using AI for knowledge search and for understanding stuff, literature review and stuff like that. Do they then go home Friday morning? No, they don't, right? They still work 5 days a week. So we're still trying to figure out how does that translate into actual value. We are seeing some products. I don't know if they're products. They're more like, so a thing that Carlsberg is doing is they're into regenerative farming and organic farming. And for farmers to be able to be certified as being regenerative farmers and organic growing farmers, there are some things that they need to live up to. And some of those things you can actually monitor from space. So it's like, are they doing cover crops? So do they rotate their crops on their fields? If you're an organic farmer, you can't plow your fields, for instance. It's pretty easy to determine from space whether they're using cover crop, whether they're plowing their fields, because the soil color tends to change. You can also pretty easily from space see what is, how much green is there on their fields. So when did they sow stuff and how well is it growing? So you can do a lot of that stuff from space, looking at actually publicly available data. And all of that goes into supply chain and into ESG and different compliance programs in Carlsberg. And that is work that traditionally takes people a lot of manual work, collecting data from a lot of disparate sources and compiling that and putting it together. AI can do it in 10 seconds. And it saves a lot of trips for people to travel around the world and go meet with farmers, and then the farmer will say, yes, it's growing great, and then you go check, and then you go home, and you can just verify that from space. So we're saving time, we're saving on jet fuel, and we're making it easier to help farmers become compliant with some of these regenerative farming practices. So great. Those are some so there are some fluffy things that we don't know how to measure, and there are some very bottom line hitting initiatives that we're doing as well.
Amazing. And Sander, getting back to you, and I'd like to explore a bit of some specifics of fashion in what you did, because H&M and Nike, so we cannot run away from fashion. But yeah, I'd like to understand in terms of specifics of fashion, because when we talk about retail and inventory and usage space of brick and mortar stores and etc., and all of this data, we can talk about it for basically every market. But in terms specific of fashion, what can you say, and can you bring some projects that you have worked or that you have participated, that the AI, the knowledge, and everything that AI brings could help in the operations? And
well, absolutely. I can bring a number of examples where things are happening, are in place already, and are definitely moving. And I mean, starting with if you look at the fashion life cycle, product design by designers, and I think that's to a degree comparable to how Peter explained what the impact is of AI on scientists. Applying it to designers is okay. AI is definitely changing how they're able to create new designs, variations in a number of ways. By giving them much easier access and searchability over historic assets, over historic designs, over what's out there on influencers, what's happening in the world, synthesizing much more of the outside world, to what's available to them to draw inspiration from, and to kind of come up with, okay, what's happening in the market and create that. And also the process of designing, making it easier to move from a sketch to actual visual product images, seeing that kind of on the patterns, etc. And so essentially kind of minimizing, or not minimizing, but reducing the manual effort needed to come up with designs and variations. But very much to Peter's degree, like, these people will not go home all of a sudden because it's there. Like, they continue. It's a creative process. So it's very much the AI is there a tool which is aiding them into the things that they are doing and focusing them on the creativity part of it. So ultimately, from a commercial perspective, you hope that you have brought product which is better fitted to the market, which will be in more demand. And it's very hard to, on such a long term process to directly see to measure the commercial impact from that. But lots is happening in that space. Absolutely. And then where I think most of the work is happening is really in the forecasting, planning space. So from long before the season starts. So large retailers, depends very much on which retailer, but legacy retailers, over a year upfront before season starts, they need to make decisions on what type of assortment they will be carrying, how many of the different kind of SKUs they want to be ordering. So very high level decision making needs to happen then. And so there they've taken to forecasting very seriously, looking at historical sales, macroeconomics, all sorts of information that is available, synthesizing that into forecasts for decision making on quantification processes early on. And then kind of as the fashion season starts, the way I always describe it is one big optimization problem is you have ordered X amount of inventory. You have about how long the season takes, 13 weeks to sell that inventory. And ideally you want it sold at full price without having to do any promo. That's the ideal world, because then you make most margin possible. But ideal world doesn't happen, so you need to correct for it. So you want to generate demand by running ads. You might see that you're underselling at some particular point, so you want to start making corrections by doing kind of personalized advertisements, or you want to do markdowns, site-wide promotion campaigns, and all sorts of mechanisms that you have, so that planners have to correct essentially the season and make sure that they run on target or above target early on. Signal if you have the risk of a stock out of specific product and order more of it, all this decision making. And you can automate lots of that, automated, and kind of create the insights that needed for the planners to make those decisions. So that is happening. What's the best thing to do? Should we move our inventory to a different store, different location? Should we rank it up on website? All of these decisions are happening. And then looking specifically at online channels, lots happening at how products are being found and discovered from search, changing from very traditional keyword-based searching and kind of panel filtering. Lots of work happening in that space across the industry to making that semantic search, so that actually is similar to how kind of chat engines work. You describe the product that you want, rather than having to filter through, and it's able to discover that through recommendations that you getting increasingly better. And I think where lots of the companies now are working on is seeing, okay, how does an agentic journey play into own channels? How does intelligent chatbots work on own channels from the larger brands? Can they build their own? Do they rely on external companies to bring that capability in to guide kind of the consumer in the exploration journey, even into the transaction? And was the collaboration there with OpenAI, Gemini, etc., and various different operating models we see across the industry being started, being stopped. So everyone's very much exploring what kind of the future of that shopping journey will be looking like. I don't think there's a convergence yet on what it will be, but lots of exploration happening definitely in the space.
Great. I was going to ask. I think it's more connected to this last part of what you explored. As per I remember, when I was more into the e-commerce world, at least two of the largest, let's say, problems within fashion was the returns, and because people buy, they are not able to So to fill the clothes and to understand correctly the size. So each a lot of times each company has its own size. And when you build that, and with this when these products are fabricated in different parts, so sometimes the production goes wrong. And so have you seen any type of AI project being able to reduce these number of returns or something touching that, and also if that is still a problem, a struggle into the fashion, especially the online world.
Yeah. So returns is a huge issue. It's a fact of the channel indeed, on online fashion retail, because especially if you sell a product, people get 2-ish weeks for it to be returned, and you see large return rates, and then it needs to be sorted out, figured out before it can be sold again. Now the season is compressed, so there's only a number of weeks that you sell the specific product. If it's out of rotation for that long, even if it was kind of returned beyond the cost of return itself, like you will never get it at a high peak back into your assortment at the right place. So that's it's definitely a big problem on profitability for e-commerce fashion. Lots is happening in that space. I worked personally on things such as size recommendations, and that can be can get quite in depth, especially if lots of data about your customers, seeing what similar products have they bought, what were returned, so how does that specific product work and work on kind of the size and fit. So there's work happening there from the more traditional kind of machine learning angle and trying to guide consumers into buying the size which will be most fit for them. And one which is relatively new but definitely emerging is virtual fitting rooms. There's a number of startups in that space that are trying to provide solutions for that part of the journey, where consumers can see on themselves that they upload images of themselves, and they can see the size and fit of the specific product on them to see what size fits better, what not, so to help with that. That is definitely happening as well, and organizational companies are trying and seeing does it work, is it helping, but lots is being done to try to indeed work on that part of the sales journey.
Great. And
I figured out a way how to solve returns, though.
Yeah, sure.
I just buy Boss because the sizes fit across everything. The polo and the shirts and the long sleeves and the pants and everything. If you find your size, they work across.
Yeah.
Every other brand, if you buy a pants or a shirt, it's slightly different, and then I send it back.
Okay. So
I just become like a Boss Mr. Bean. It works for me.
That's great, and not a bad choice also. And let's enter governance. And I think when we're talking about AI and enterprise, this should be a good topic. And I have a question for you both. Should every employee be allowed to build AI applications, or are we creating the next generation of shadow IT or development? I think, yeah.
I think it depends on what is an application. I think it's a bit of a quicksand lava pit to jump into. Back to distribution. I think the only way to people to learn how to leverage AI is for them to be able to play with it and use it and build stuff and see if it works. And if it doesn't work, then throw it away and try again. Having said that, I don't think people should, build stuff that needs to be deployed. It needs to be something that they can run, inside Copilot or inside OpenAI, utilizing the features that they have in their platform, so that a normal person doesn't have to worry about, servers and databases and network connections and stuff. So it needs to be something that they can deploy for themselves. That I definitely think that everybody should be able to do. The part where everybody has become a developer and now they want, oh, can you build this infrastructure for me and deploy it and then it'll be fine? No, that's never going to work. Quick answer.
Yeah, I align with Peter on this. I think for everyday usage, yeah, I think even then with guardrails, but like I'd compare it to, do we give all employees access to Excel to help their day-to-day work?
Exactly.
Yes, we do. AI is another tool there if you can deploy it in your own machine within the kind of bounded box which you have provided, and they know what it can do, and so they might have some training, just like they have learned how to use VLOOKUP and in Excel, but kind of similar to that. So to aid our day-to-day work, absolutely, but not as something which is a sustained kind of process, which is set up, because then it does require more governance, and there need to be kind of body of governance. There need to be proper engineering involved. Just like to do, I don't think it's any different from any different type of application development. Just that it's much easier for that to occur, especially with vibe coding and all the things out there. The risk is definitely larger. The exposure risk is larger as well.
And how is H&M and Nike and these and also nowadays in your advisory firm, how does these enterprise think about governance in these terms? So allowing and letting and engaging people to work with AI, but how they see in terms of governance, the boundaries and everything. How's that being leveled?
So what I see across industries, actually, I think is larger enterprises initially a large shutdown or large restrictions on the use of AI, just because of the fear, indeed, of also the risk which arise from the use of AI, including non-compliance with AI, and therefore just restriction in general. And now finding the right operating models, indeed, with deployment of Copilot to a large degree, or other kind of agreements with OpenAI, Claude, etc., but in a controlled way, giving that access to a broad, if not all, employees for everyday today use, under strict governance rules on what and what not to be done with that. And then for application development, kind of large development, governance bodies set up within enterprises, multidisciplinary, ranging cybersecurity, legal, architecture, etc., would govern kind of new use cases coming in which require development, looking at solutions, making sure also from a compliance perspective they're properly being tracked and categorized from an AI Act perspective, and kind of brand or company policy perspective, and seeing that sometimes differentiating between what in sandbox developers can be doing much more than production application, but finding kind of that operating model to scale. Larger bottleneck is, I think, the huge amount of demand which is there to do things with AI, to build AI applications, versus what you can take on, what you can safely govern, deploy, and develop within a company. So I think many companies are struggling with finding that right operating model, actually, to get it right.
Great.
I like to make a blast radius, so that whenever you do something, then how many, if the hand grenade goes off, how many people can it kill? And you want to try and keep that to one, yourself. So what we're doing mostly is that we're saying that everything that you deploy, you can only deploy it to your own sort of environment. So you can only hurt yourself if it blows up. And then as soon as you want to share stuff and deploy stuff into broader groups of people, broader cohorts, then the risk increases and the blast radius increases, and then that's where governance sets in. And I do see a bit of sort of governance paralysis, where people are going, oh no, we'd rather have way more governance than required, because then nobody gets hurt. And I think, if you go back to the basics of having a one person that can die from a hand grenade goes off, then distribution comes in, and then people will learn, and then over time, AI becomes just a tool. It's like Excel, what Sander said before. Everybody will know how to use it, and we'll have less of these failed projects because they tend to become these, lighthouse things where, it will save us 100 million something, and then it didn't really. So I think we are certainly in the trough of disillusionment of the famous Gardner hype cycle.
Great. I'd love to hear, to encourage the participation of everyone who's here. So please, I will just give you guys some moments so you can prepare to participate. We'd love to have your questions and point of views and even counterpoints. And while you're doing that, I just have one question for Peter, that I think that connects very well with what you said here at last. So do you see engineers and executives thinking the same or different about governance when related to AI?
Oh, totally different. I think engineers are caught even more, here, companies always hire software developers and then they give them a company laptop that's locked down so they can't do any work. I think it's the same with AI. If you are a software engineer, then for you to be able to do your work, you have to be able to utilize all the tooling that's available, and then you pick from the available tools to choose the right ones to solve the problem that you're trying to solve. And I think business people are, because of going back to governance and blast radius, are scared out of their minds that the crazy engineers will build something which will blow up between their hands. So they'd rather shut it down with lots of governance. And that, I think, hinders, again, distribution and the eventual goodness of AI.
Okay, great. Thank you. And let's open the floor as it should be. If we're on the stage, so Luana, please.
Hello, guys. While I was listening the conversation so far, I made some note, and it's a very trending thing and a very main concern in many of the companies, especially the multinationals, is the environment impact, like you buy a lot of carbon credits and so forth. So one of my questions is, we know, for example, Carlsberg, there's a lot of problems in waste of the food production and so forth, and the standards normally at the end of the collection, the seasons, there's a lot of waste and so on. So how AI can help directly to show impact on this part, at the environment part, the waste and so forth, minimizing, reducing, and helping the companies with these environmental goals, who became like a trending and need to be faster than we were expecting years ago, and that became a priority. Not all of a sudden, but it's being a challenge for many of the companies. So how you guys see AI in that environment and that part of the companies?
I think AI is something that's being considered as a tool to do good everywhere. Carlsberg has a very expensive agenda on, almost the old school triple bottom line. So they're very adamant about, again, regenerative farming, making sure that there's as little waste as possible. That at least in Europe, we have a return on bottles and packaging, that we reduce the weight and the plastic and the aluminum involved in packaging. So there's a lot of focus on that. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, when you create food where in like beer, there is a ton of waste. And the process of creating beer requires a lot of water and it requires a lot of energy. And it's it's an area where a lot of smart people have spent the last 50 years trying to make it better and better. So the advances that we can get these days are like almost not there. I think AI will probably be used to more, bottom line benefit in some of the areas that Sander mentioned before. So it's probably in selling, and it's probably in operations, and it's probably in productivity and those areas. I think it's going to be less in, and I could be wrong because that's what Carlsberg Research is working for all the time, but I doubt that they're going to come out with, they're not going to go, we know how to boil beer for like half the energy tomorrow. That's probably not going to happen. I think it's going to be in some of the other areas where those productivity gains are going to come in faster.
Yeah, and I think similar for fashion. At the same time, to your point, no fashion retailer likes to disregard collection and end of the season. Ideally, they have done a good job assessing very much upfront what the demand will be, done all the corrections so that there's no disregard at the end of the season, and what is left, still sold at different channels at a price point which is saving some of the margin of it. So I think where AI will be making the biggest impact is very much optimizing the decision making of that part, that kind of merchandising part of the value chain, to make sure that waste is minimized, not per se for the reason environmental gains, just because that's more efficient and more beneficial for the bottom line of the retailer. And I think that that's where the biggest impact. There's definitely stuff happening, indeed in the space of ESG monitoring, as well as monitoring entire supply chain, monitoring procurement of resources. All of these things, AI is happening there as well. But in terms of biggest impact environmentally, it will be an optimizing merchandising decision making, because that's just where the biggest impact on the environment sits.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Anyone else? Great. No, if you have any other question, I think everyone is shy today. Anyone? I have a great question I think it's a great question for Sander. You said now that companies, fashion specifically, when they have their collections, you have a problem when you produce way more than what you sold at the end of the season. How do you see that? So, what would you say? Do you see that companies, the fashion companies, they would prefer to not sell to everyone, so they have, or what is more efficient? So not to sell to everyone, or have products at the end of the day that they cannot sell and that they need to dispose of that in some way.
So there's a sweet spot there of course, indeed, and there's two competing challenges. On one hand, you have a stock out problem, so you sold more than the inventory you have, and your lead times are larger than your decision making, so you don't have enough time to order more of it. Or if you have to do it at a factory which is closer, at a higher kind of operating cost, etc. So from a margin perspective, that's not beneficial to do. So that's one hand. On the other hand, you bought too much inventory early on, and you're not able to sell it, and therefore you have to make corrections in terms of markdowns, pricing, etc. And so there's a sweet spot, and kind of fashion retailers will aim for somewhere in the middle. Usually it's on the lower end, especially early on. Like if your lead time allow it, it's very different from the dynamics. Like some retailers have very long lead times. And they will want to make sure that they have enough inventory to sell, and they have kind of small amount of SKUs. So they want to make sure they are there. Others run with large number of SKUs, lower quantity items, and always sell out. So it's very different on how kind of the type of fashion retailer you are, but there's a number they aim for, indeed, to make sure that they get. And in the ideal world, you have zero inventory left at the end of the season. Everything is sold full price. That's what you optimize for. But that's never the case.
That's the dream of
Yeah.
all the fashion industry, right? Well, anyone else, please, Peter, you haven't spoken.
I have a question for Sander. As a data scientist, I see a pattern happening in Carlsberg, which is driving me nuts. I see a lot of business people who used to rely on data scientists turn AI into the runtime. Let me explain. What they used to do was to, for instance, for forecasting or any kind of analysis or reporting that would require some sort of a time series machine learning model, perhaps. They're now no longer doing that anymore. They're just feeding their AI with their Excel spreadsheets, and then they go, take a look at the internet and see if you can find something that would influence my position on supply chain or marketing or something. And here are some Excel spreadsheets, and here's HTML code, which is the report that I want done, and then do this 3 times a week. Which is horrible for a couple of reasons. They stop using data scientists, so the report that they get out is but also AI is the runtime. So what they're effectively doing is, rather than coding the import of the data and the actual model and the actual KPIs and the actual report, they're just making AI build that up every week and then throw it away. So they're effectively just going, money, which turns into tokens, which gets used and thrown out every week. So I guess it's like an anti-ESG move. But I see it as a pattern. I see this where AI becomes the runtime and it's replacing old school knowledge work. Is that something you're seeing?
Yeah, maybe not as much as you described, but definitely. And I think no, I get your point. I think what was needed, to counter that is a number of things. One is proper education, literacy, kind of across the board, especially non-tech people, also tech people actually, but also especially non-tech people in this case. And then secondly is when building kind of a portfolio of AI use cases and kind of how data science actually works within the enterprise, is making sure that data science doesn't work from just use case to use case, kind of jumps across, but that you look at and trying to build a dashboard or the model, but look at, okay, what is the decision making? What is the process which we're trying to impact with the model that you have, and not just provide the technology to the stakeholder as is, but reshape the process, integrate kind of the model into the decision making, into the tooling which is being used, so that just part of the workflow, so there's no of less of a need to do these custom analyses by those stakeholders, and indeed for it to work. So redesign the entire processes so that the forecasting, the optimization model, etc., is part of the workflow, and thus reducing need. I think to a degree it will always be there, like that shadow IT and indeed shadow analysis part, kind of Gustav who alluded to earlier, will be there. I don't think it'll be solved, but especially where the impact is the highest, you want to make sure that the processes, the forecasting is done properly, the optimization is done properly, and is embedded into the process, because that's where the impact and the value comes from as well. You want a decision taken differently with the knowledge of the forecast and the model which is there. So the process needs to be reshaped around it. I don't think it's a trivial thing it's a company-wide awareness and literacy, and it's strict portfolio management on the data science and kind of AI engineering teams in order to build out that discipline. Tough challenge.
I manage our OpenAI platform, so I can see how much usage is being used, how many credits and tokens are we using, and I'm seeing an increase in this happening. So there are people doing this, turn it into an agent, and then have it run like 3 times a week, even if they only need the results once. And so some of these agents are consuming tokens, as 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 people. And if you just coded the damn thing, it will probably run for free. Anyway,
Yeah.
I feel strongly about it. So obviously, Juan, I wrote a page.
Yeah, no, that actually, thanks. I'll read it.
Juan, please.
No, I guess Sander mainly answered right. I think it probably boils down to AI literacy, the fact that you have salespeople that are getting used to have they used to have like an Excel sheet, and now it's they put it in a way that they can use it with natural language and kind of helps you out. But you still need to understand that it's not a free tool, right? It's not like you still have to understand that it burns tokens. It's not a free tool, and so I guess part of the importance of sharing this throughout the company and getting AI literacy. It's a fairly new tool that everyone has in their hands, is to teach each other better ways of working. And I do this as a software engineer at my day-to-day work, where I am still trying to get most effective ways of leveraging AI on my day-to-day work, right? So I guess the only way at some point is that someone will talk to this person that is not using it effectively, and probably if they communicate among different parts of the company, they will at some point get the right idea, and a proper tool will be built on top of that Excel sheet that someone was talking about, or some data that is sitting somewhere in some other tools, and it becomes broadly available through some of these new AI tools. That was just my point. Sorry.
Yeah, good point. I spent a lot of my time writing skills. Does everyone know what a skill is in terms of AI? Okay, I tend to write a lot of skills because I think they're great at publishing them. It's easy for people to start using a skill, and they tend to encode what people write in prompt. So you get a more reliable answer, and you get it with less tokens.
That's great. Anyone else has any question? Bjorn, Akan, please feel free. If not, I have some questions here also.
Yeah, I have some problems with my internet connection.
Oh, great.
We can't fix that.
Getting in and out. I have no idea what it is. Yeah, well, I would have a question. And if you can hear me, I can ask it.
Yeah, we can.
We have talked a lot about productivity gains. Yeah, and that's what usually AI is about. And as I said in the introduction, I mostly look to China, what's happening there. And there they don't care much about productivity gains. They think more about growth. Yeah, use AI to grow the business. And my favorite AI case, although nobody sees it that way, is Shein for AI in fashion. Because there they reinvented the supply chain using AI, and they are doing this for very cheap clothes. Okay, that's a different story, but it shows that AI has much more potential than just save a few euros or dollars. Yeah, and what do you think about this?
Yeah, it's very much so, Bjorn. And I think in to earlier points where we discussed what's the value of AI, where does create value, and productivity gains is one of the three categories beyond growth and kind of key decision making and improvements. But unless your professional services business and most of your cogs are sitting in employee costs, you're trying to save 30% gains in terms of productivity from employees, and then you need to do something with that. So you need to either reduce your headcount by 30%, or you need to grow to a number of degree without hiring more to actually capitalize on that gain. It's very small, and indeed that's where we often talk about where the values sit. But very much so, it sits in how you leverage it across the business and decision making, in growth and product, across value chain. I'll share the link. I wrote an article actually exactly about this, Bjorn, the Shein example, on how many things wrong with Shein, but from a business perspective, how they leverage AI across to make much faster data-driven decisions with AI across kind of the merchandising, product decisions there, and how that's really reshaping how the business as a whole is operating, and therefore not looking at the existing processes, trying to reduce them by 30% costs, but changing the business landscape altogether. And absolutely, I think there's much more value in that, but requires for existing players much larger change process transformation, org-wide transformation process, rather than seeing spot-to-spot solutions across the business.
Great. Hakan, you had let me just give one point. So everyone, please share your LinkedIn in the chat so you all can connect after the session. Please, Hakan. You have to raise your hand.
Yeah, sorry, my video is playing up here as well. Just to follow up on that, I guess, I work with more small to medium-sized companies, and one of the big problems there has been on the data side of they don't know where the data comes from, and they don't know what to do with that. And clearly, there's education needed, but you two have worked for very large organizations. Did you come across the same issues around the data management and the data flow? I also work with some pharma companies where they have the data nailed down on the clinical side, but on the sales side, it's very, very different as well in terms of how they manage that. And what kind of issues have you seen for you two in much larger organizations than maybe I work with?
Yeah, I can definitely talk to that, Hakan, kind of across fashion and apparel industry. And I think you hit that or you hit the nail on the head with saying in the pharma on the regulated side, data is much sorted out. On the sales side, but it's much less regulated, probably not. And I think that's very much true. Talking about apparel and retailers as well, never has there been any regulatory pressure or outside pressure to get data governance and data landscape sorted out. So the only efforts that have been there have been just to try to come up with reporting, etc. on that, but very much siloed organizationally. Data landscapes scattered, no semantic layers, etc. on that. But now, if you look from an AI perspective, where's value really at? If you're able to combine data and insights across your value chain, from product, from supply chain to consumers, etc., and create the kind of models which are sitting across that, and that requires having that data landscape there. So what I do see across companies now spending much more effort than a few years ago on getting that governance, on getting that semantic layer out, just because they see these opportunities, and there's a big gap at the moment where there hasn't been ever pressure outside to try to get that better. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Great. Anyone has another question? So let's. I have some final questions. Peter, I'll start with you. So what does, after all this conversation, what does an AI native enterprise actually look like?
Well, I guess it's just an enterprise where everyone has access to AI.
As simple as that?
I think it's kind of I get the question and the premise, but it's also kind of annoying because it's kind of like, not for a very short time ago, it was like, I'm internet native, or I'm cloud native, or I'm this native or that native, or I'm Web3 native, or whatever. These things always tend to come up, but clearly for a company, in my opinion, to be AI native, it needs to be a company where everybody has equal access to AI. It is like electricity or fire or water or whatever. Without, if you centralize AI for a group of people, then the people around that group of people are not going to be able to get the benefit. I sometimes have this analogy with, the age of enlightenment, where we, took the power away from the church, and we translated all the Bibles into all the different languages, and we made reading and writing available for everyone, and that unlocked knowledge for everyone. I think AI is the same. If we lock up AI in the churches and we only make it speak Latin, then nobody will benefit from it. So, an AI native company or organization or anywhere definitely needs to be a place where everybody has equal access.
Great. And Sander, from your perspective on a more commercial side, so what does an AI native commercial organization looks like?
It's not a trivial question to answer, Gustavo, but I'll do my best. I think to many of the earlier points we talked to, decision making across is taken so that automated as possible, taking in all the information which is available beyond, I think, the ability of any human to do so. So when you look at all the external information there is, which is relevant for the decision making within your company, all the information which is available within your own organization is synthesized in a way that is optimized to take that decision, and the human operator sit at a higher level of abstraction of decision making. So where today very technical decisions are being made by humans, I think ideally in kind of the AI native space, if you would just call it so, much of that is heightened, so that strategical decision making can take much more place by those. So to your earlier point, Gustavo, okay, do we need to buy more or less? In general, if you think about assortment and product, there's lots. Is there you can synthesize all the things which might be happening, the demand which will be there, might not. There is a strategical question underlying there: how much margin are you willing to compromise, not to lose the sale, etc. And those are the strategical questions about the business that you want your kind of human operators to focus on. And much of the decision making, okay, how to actually activate that doesn't mean you can price down certain categories. You want to order more of that. Those you can automate. Those are kind of optimizations happening across with all the information across, but you want the strategy work to set out, I think, by humans, and then much more automation in the processes and decision making across.
Great. So, well, I like to, if no one has another question, so I like to thank you everyone for being here and for this splendid session. I found it really interesting. We have a lot of not only insights but learnings from both and from everyone that has participated. So thank you very much. And now, Sander, how can anyone find you and what you're doing right now? What is Ardinois and what you guys doing there?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'll drop my LinkedIn in a second. Quite easy to find. Right now, kind of doing advisory work and a number of different things, kind of helping companies in data and AI space, both existing companies helping on migration projects or AI roadmaps, but also startups helping kind of position their products, especially within the apparel space, AI native products, helping them to position it, but also the architecture, the AI architecture they need for that. So trying to blend all that experience and kind of sharing to a broader group of companies.
Great, thank you very much. And you can also find Sander through Evolve Network and our group.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and Peter, please, where can people find you? You have your amazing blog, and I must say that I miss your lightbox back there, where you had always a good message for us. So you don't have it anymore. So.
No, well, no, I'm on LinkedIn. I hang out on my blog as well. I think those are and GitHub, of course. I don't know, I hang out on GitHub a lot. So I think those are my 3 primary locations. I try to stay away from social media apart from LinkedIn. I just get aggravated every time I'm on X and all of the other ones. And I like Blue Sky, but there's just nobody posting anything over there. So it's kind of an empty echo chamber. But yeah, mostly LinkedIn.
Great. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining. This was expert session number 123. And see you next week at the same time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
so much.
So,
Bye-bye.
see you.